Hello anime fan, welcome back to What If Animes 2.0. So in this video you gonna see, what if Naruto was trained by Orochimaru? This is part 2. And if you want more then hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. So let's getting the video and do check out the author of the story. Naruto groggily walked to the training ground where his team resided. The reason for his lateness being that he had stayed awake all night thinking about how awesome of a shinobi his father had to have been for the old man to praise him so much. Of course this eventually led to the thought of abandonment by his father, and that had caused Naruto to slip into a slight depression and result in staying up all night. Though Naruto was exhausted, he was not about to slouch or let anyone take pity on him. The Sandaime put his faith in Naruto and he would not let the old man down. Plus now he had a team that was counting on him as well and he wouldn't let them down. He smiled softly at that thought. He wondered if this was what it was like to have friends and people that cared. If this is what it felt like, then he would do his best not to let that go and to protect them if necessary. Not to say that Naruto liked them yet. He was just happy they tolerated him and in turn he would tolerate them. Needless to say that when Naruto had finally arrived, 40 minutes late, that Kurenai saw fit to give him an earful at that exact moment. "Well, look who decided to join us." Kurenai began in a very motherly-like tone. "Honestly, your second day with your team and this is how you show up. Not only are you late, but you look like you haven't slept at all. Imagine how your team feels, knowing that you may or may not save them because you didn't arrive on time." And she went on and on and on. It wasn't until Naruto shot her a glare that looked exactly like a green-eyed version of something Orochimaru would do. Luckily for her, he sighed deeply, realizing his mistake. "I am sorry, Kurenai-sensei. I promise it will not happen again." This caused Kurenai to blink. Naruto turned to Hinata and Shino with a slight bow. "I am sorry to you both as well." Hinata blushed slightly at the respectful and formal nature Naruto was suddenly taking. Her and Shino had both seen the glare and mentally agreed they never wanted to be on the receiving end of one of those. Shino pushed up his glasses before responding. "I will take you at your word, Naruto." Naruto nodded to the Aburame before looking to Hinata. She merely nodded at Naruto and he took that as a sign that she also took him at his word. "Yes, well, do not let it become a habit. I can understand a few times but not constantly. We have enough lazy people in this village already," she said off-handedly, thinking of a certain Shadow Clan and a one-eyed Jonin. "Anyway, today we are having our first team training session. I will assign you 3 a regime and you will follow it. After that we will get together to rest and talk for a bonding experience. After that there will be more training, then I will release you for the day." The 3 genin nodded at their sensei. Kurenai smiled and formed 2 perfect cage bushins. She whispered instructions to them and let them go and grab their students. The clones had taken Hinata and Shino. Thus the real Kurenai took Naruto. They walked a few feet until they got to a tall tree. The ruby-eyed woman turned around to face Naruto. "Naruto, have you done this yet? The tree climbing exercise?" Kurenai asked in a questioning voice. Naruto looked at the tree and smiled. "Yup." To prove his point, Naruto walked over to the tree and dashed up it. His training sessions on the tree to improve his speed did wonders for his chakra control. Not to mention his physical speed. Put the two together and he was able to ascend and descend the tree rather quickly. Kurenai smiled physical. Mentally she had wondered where the boy had learned to do such a thing. She knew for a fact that it wasn't taught in the academy. She also knew that this boy lived alone his whole life and never even attended the academy, so how would he know what to do? "Very good, Naruto. I had planned to start you on this so I could gauge your skills, but it looks like I will have to move on to plan B." Admittedly, Kurenai wanted to train Naruto herself. She hadn't been told a single thing about his abilities. Just that he had beaten the Uchiha single-handedly. "Plan B?" Naruto asked curiously. It was then that Kurenai gave him a sickeningly sweet smile as she pulled out a small whistle. "Oh yes." She blew the whistle as hard as she could. "Now run," she yelled. Startled, Naruto took off and began running around the training ground with Kurenai right on his heels. Every time Naruto would think about slowing down, she would cast a genjutsu to scare him and force him to keep running. "You're crazy," Naruto yelled through labored breath. When he turned around to look at his sensei, he was awarded with the sight of a tri-horned demon with bursting muscles chasing him. "Ah?" Hinata looked toward the direction of his teammate with a face of worry. Not 2 seconds ago she had heard Naruto scream loudly like he was in danger. Hinata was about to move to go see what was going on when the Kage Bushin of Kurenai appeared. "Where are you going, Hinata?" Kage Kurenai asked the curious little girl in front of her. Hinata gripped her tan sweater tighter and brought her hands up to her face. "I thought Naruto just screamed." The clone smiled at the girl. "I'm sure he did. Now get back to training. That tree won't climb itself." Shino paused on his tree. He had moved about halfway up the tree when he had heard the pale boy scream. A part of him thought that it could be nothing. Another part of him thought that the most logical explanation would be that Kurenai-sensei had done something to him. Just then an insect the size of a pebble landed on his nose bridge. This bug in particular was a tracker. He would place it on something or someone and it would radiate a signal he could pick on and interpret. This bug had been on Naruto. Chakra. Disturbed. Female. Chasing. The insect relayed his information. They couldn't really carry a lot of information, but Shino caught the gist of the story. Kurenai was chasing Naruto and had placed him under a genjutsu to keep him motivated. Clever. He whispered to himself and continued to climb the tree. Several hours of training had gone by and the rookies of Team 8 were completely exhausted. Naruto had spent all morning being chased by all kinds of nightmarish creatures and Kurenai. Hinata spent her time by working on getting up and down the tree she was assigned as quickly as she could. Shino did his training by simply sticking to the tree and slowly walking up and down, fighting gravity all the while. Kurenai appeared before the group with a smile. The three kids were laying down, sprawled out in the grass. "Come on, sit up. I brought us all lunches," she said cheerfully. Soon, one by one, the three got up into a sitting position. All of them looked a mere second away from passing out. The first day of training. She sat down in deep thought, remembering her own first day with her team. But she lost her smile when she remembered that she was the only one left alive from her group. Shaking her head, she handed out the boxes of food to each person. Each of them scarfed down their food with little regard. "Well," Kurenai said as she watched them all finish their food, "why don't we start with how your day went yesterday?" She asked them and watched their reactions. Shino seemed to tense up ever so slightly. Hinata instantly looked away and Naruto let a small smile creep onto his face. "I will start, then we will go to Shino, then Hinata, and finally Naruto," she said with a smile. "I did nothing interesting or anything that I could tell you all about." The three genin, even Shino, face faulted. Though it was true. They didn't need to know that she had spent all night convincing Anko not to hate the boy, then spending the rest with Asuma. That was informative. Shino said with obvious sarcasm in his voice. "I informed my clan that I had been placed on a team with Hyuga Hinata, the heiress of her clan, and Naruto." Upon speaking of the latter's name, I received many strange looks for a moment before they looked away. When I had confronted my father of the ordeal, he had said nothing but to keep an eye on the boy. Shino stated plainly. He saw no reason to hide anything. He needed to build trust with them as they would be watching his back. Kurenai nodded grimly. She knew exactly why he would have gotten those looks, but she couldn't say a thing. The law the third had passed made it forbidden to talk about with anyone. Even other people who knew about it. "Well, I am glad they were accepting of your new status." Shino nodded again. "How about you, Hinata?" The Hyuga's face instantly fell into one of despair when she thought of previous night. Flashback. The excited Hinata quickly walked back home. Surely Hiyashi, her father, would be happy that she had passed the test but also landed on a team with an Aburame. She gave the guards a brief nod when she passed them. They smiled at her and let her through without any troubles. The Branch family did love Hinata dearly, even more so than her own family had. She had never acted like a main house member, never used the cage bird seal on them. Heck, she never even glared at them. But sadly there was little they could do for her but be kind to her when they could. When Hinata entered the house, her cousin, Neji, was there and waiting for her. A deep scowl on his pale features. "Lady Hinata. Lord Hiyashi wishes to see you in her chambers this very moment." His tone was cold and emotionless as always. For as long as Hinata could remember, Neji had been very spiteful towards Hinata and took any chance he could get to make her life hell on earth. "Thank you, Neji. I will go see him now," she said, trying to present an air of confidence from her body. Neji scoffed at her before storming away. She sighed one last time before building up her nerves to go face her father. Stepping around the wooden corner of her family's compound, she saw the silhouette of her father standing in his office, looking over the courtyard. Hinata sheepishly knocked on the door just loud enough to be heard on the other side. "I was told by Neji you wanted to see me?" She spoke quietly, almost to the point of silence, but Hiyashi heard. Hiyashi heard everything that went on in the clan, both inside the compound and out. He was silent for a few moments before responding. "Did you pass?" he asked abruptly, seemingly breaking the silence between the two. "Yes, I did. I have been placed in Team 8. Hinata mentally jumped for joy. She had yet to stutter or waver in her father's presence. Of course his back was to her and he hadn't really spoken anything yet, but still, Team 8. Her father mused to himself. "Led by Kurenai if I am not mistaken." Hinata nodded at this. Not that Hiyashi would see or anything like that. "And who are your teammates?" he asked, finally gracing her by turning around and focusing on her. "Aburame Shino-A and Nen Naruto." She cursed at herself mentally for her stuttering. Even more so when her father frowned at her for it. "The Aburame I approve of. If Shino grows to be anything like his father, then he will be a skilled shinobi. As for the Naruto boy." Hiyashi paused as a scowl crept onto his face, making himself seem older than he already was. "I do not approve of him. Be cautious around him, Hinata. If you start noticing weird behavior, tell me. Sadly, I am not Hokage or I would have you moved from that team." Hinata wanted to ask her father why he had been so dead set against Naruto. She had met the boy for the first time today and he seemed to be a kind enough person. A little strange and lacking people skills, but she couldn't judge him in that department. Every time she got around Mino, the Yondaimi's son, she passed out for God's sake. "Why yes, father." She bowed to him, accepting his terms. "You're dismissed till dinner." "Congratulations on passing," he said in his usual drawl. Hinata couldn't help but swell with pride at hearing that. That was the first time he had given her any type of encouragement in over 5 years. Bowing once more, she left the roof silently. She practically floated through the compound. Hinata glowed brighter than she ever had in a long time since her mother was alive. When she entered her room, she jumped on the bed and screamed into her pillow. In short, she was on cloud 9. One thing did bring her out of such a stupor. Why did Hiyashi hate Naruto? No matter how many times she thought of it, she could not understand it in the slightest. But for now she was tired and would sleep on the subject. She laid down and closed her eyes as sleep found her. Flashback end. Hinata snapped out of her memory lane trip and blushed when she realized she had zoned out in reality. My father was happy to hear about my team. He even congratulated me." Kurenai had to fight back a look of surprise on her face. She knew of Hiyashi very well. And she did not like him in the slightest. "I am very happy to hear that, Hinata." Kurenai exclaimed happily, causing Shino and Naruto to raise a brow at that. That seemed a little too enthusiastic for something as small as a "good job" comment. And last but certainly not least, Naruto. The pale boy leaned his head forward and smiled slightly, not that anyone could see it as his hair had moved in the way. He raised his head with a neutral face. "Well, not much happened. I went home and spoke to the old man about joining. He was happy that I had been put on a team with you, Kurenai-sensei, and that I was getting along with my teammates. Then he told me about my father somewhat." Kurenai paled slightly at that. Not that the others noticed as their attention was put on Naruto. "What did you learn of your father?" she asked carefully. Hopefully this old man didn't say who exactly his father was, and judging by the look on Naruto's face, he hadn't. "He didn't tell me much. Just that he was a great genius shinobi and that he is still alive. I hope I get to meet him one day. I still have so many questions, but the old man won't tell me any more." He left out their deal about the Chunin exams. He wouldn't dare pressure them into it. Plus they performed better if by their free will and drive. Kurenai mentally breathed a sigh of relief. Whoever it was appeared to be a smart man and a cunning man at that. Technically what was said wasn't a lie. Orochimaru really was and is a genius prodigy, and he is still very much alive and active. Though Kurenai knew that for them to meet would spell a disaster. At least not while was still impressionable. "That is very nice to hear, Naruto. Maybe one day you will find him." She stopped when she thought of something. "Naruto, who is this old man?" she asked seriously. "What if someone was leaking information about the village or something?" "Oh. Just the Sandame. Sarutobi Hiruzen is what other people call him. I just call him old man or grandpa." The other three members of Team 8 face faulted at the casualness that Naruto took with the elderly Hokage. Kurenai actually felt a little stupid for letting that pass her head. Makes sense. She grumbled, causing Naruto to raise a brow. Anyway, you guys have another 30 minutes to rest. I hope you use it, she said before puffing away in a cloud of smoke. The three genin looked to each other before falling backwards and passing out. With Kurenai had teleported to the home of the Sarutobi clan as she had done many times before. This though she was not here for a clandestine meeting with Asuma. One that might result in a night of passionate. She blushed at her thoughts before deciding to seek out the leader of the Sarutobi clan. She roamed through the halls for a few minutes before eventually finding the correct door. She gave the door a slight knock. Come in. She heard the elderly voice call out. When she opened the door she was surprised to say the least. The place looked exactly like the office in the Hokage Tower. The ex-Hokage sheepishly rubbed the back of his head at her expression. I kinda miss the place, I can tell, she said absent-mindedly before shaking her head to clear her thoughts. So Naruto told me you told him somewhat of his father? She asked seriously. She had a right to know these things, damn it, and nothing was going to stop her from finding out. Sarutobi sighed slightly. Troublesome situation, he mumbled under his breath. Yes, I informed Naruto that his father was a genius and a very skilled shinobi. And that he was still alive. Nothing more. Kurenai was again relieved. Not that she didn't believe Naruto. She just wanted to double-check. Should we tell him? I know it's not the best idea, but if he were to find out any other way then he may hate us for lying to him. Hiruzen pondered this for a moment, smoking his pipe. She had a point, though the odds of him finding out from an outside source was very unlikely. You made a good point, but no. If he were to find out and research who Orochimaru is, he may discover that he is disgusted with that and fall into a deep depression, or worse, he may try to reach out to the man. Kurenai nodded. She believed that honesty would be the best option in this case, but decided to believe in the wisdom of the Sandaime. And if he asks me about him? A very real possibility born from curiosity if nothing else. Tell him that the Chunin exams are coming up if he asks. He should get the meaning and remain silent. The elderly man smiled, making Kurenai wonder what the Hokage had up his sleeve. What are you planning, old man? She said the last part with emphasis. The Hokage blushed slightly at the familiar nickname. He explained that to you, huh? Sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. Kurenai nodded with a giggle. Yes, he did. He seems rather fond of you. The elderly Kage smiled. I suppose he would. I am really the only one who was ever there for him. After every beating, stabbing, mugging. After every training sessions and all the questions that followed after. He reminds me so much of how innocent Orochimaru was before the death of his parents. I really do care for him. Kurenai couldn't help but to smile before she looked at the time. I am sorry, Lord Third, but I really must be getting back to my team. They should be waking up very soon. Hiruzen laughed heartily at that. Working them hard, eh? The ruby-eyed woman smiled, her pearly white teeth brightening up the room. Of course. It is a Jonin's job to make sure their team is prepared for all sorts of events. Sarutobi waved his hand in the air. True enough. And when he opened his eyes she was gone. A pile of dust in her spot. Hiruzen sighed to himself when he pulled out his small crystal ball. Let's see how the second round goes. Training Ground 8. When Kurenai arrived she had pulled out a little can with a red horn on top of it. Kurenai smirked at her devious idea of how to wake them up. She mentally counted down. 1, 2, 3. Now, she pushed on the horn, causing a loud high-pitched noise to pierce the still air. She could have fallen over and laughed at the reactions she got from the three. Hinata's eyes shot open and she launched her body straight up in the air and latched onto the tree limb directly above her. Much like a cat would when scared. Shino instantly let his bugs out to cover his body entirely so that he was nothing more than a black mass. All just to block out that damnable sound. Naruto had leapt backwards and somehow managed to form an earth wall in front of himself despite still being asleep. Now that you are all awake and chipper, it's time to train again. Kurenai spoke swiftly as more clones appeared and took their charges away. Once again Naruto was left with the real sensei. This was something he desperately did not want. More lap sensei? He asked nervously. Kurenai gave him a wicked smile in return. Oh no. The laps were to test your general speed and endurance. Next we need to test muscle strength. So push-ups it is. She pulled out her whistle and blew into it. Go go go. Naruto groaned and began his series of push-ups. Hiruzen watched the scene with a smile. It seemed that this group was going to get along rather well. 2 months later, Team 8 had continued with their various training sessions for a little over 2 months. To say that they were grueling and unforgiving would be an understatement. Each of them were worked to the bone and then some. Kurenai insisted that it was all in the form of being prepared. The genin didn't think so. Naruto was being driven to perform more physical tasks. The constant running of laps had done wonders for his ability in the speed and stamina department. Add on that he did constant series of push-ups and the boy was gaining strength quickly. Not to mention the chakra exercises. And Kurenai was deeply pleased by that. Naruto needed to become the front-line fighter of the group. A combination of ninjutsu and taijutsu. Hinata trained mostly in speed and chakra control. She was the eyes of the group, able to see or peer into anything that may be worth looking into. She did the tree climbing exercise regularly and even picked up the training style of Naruto. Namely running up and down the tree to build leg muscle and speed. Shino worked the most on his chakra control, capacity, and general toughness. He became, more or less, the feelers for the group. Able to sense anything that may come too close and to keep an eye on his comrades or enemies at all times. He used his enhanced control and capacity to better control his insects and to give them more complex instructions. Over the course of the 2 months the team had foregone the use of the afternoon for training. Instead they had picked up doing D-ranked missions to build up their shinobi profile. The genin found these missions to be nothing more than menial chores and tasks. They did everything from painting houses and fences, to cleaning up the local dog crap. The Inuzuka dogs were the worst. At least according to Naruto. On numerous occasions they had chased down a cat named Tora. This cat easily became their most hated chore. Damn thing had more than 9 lives. Eventually the group became beyond fed up with the chores and wanted a chance to prove themselves. A chance to show that they were ready to become full-fledged ninja. Not some labor force for the common good. In fact, that is where they were at the current moment. In front of Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime, for another mission. Lord Hokage. Kurenai bowed. Team 8 reporting for another mission. Minato looked up from his desk with a smile. He loved to see the will of fire in a team. Especially one as young as they are. Very well. What will it be today? The genin cringed at that. Silently they were hoping to get a higher ranked mission. Any D ranks left? And just like that, all their hope went straight down the drain. Yes. In fact I think Tora needs to be captured again. If you want, Minato was cut off by a young but firm voice from behind Kurenai. I am sorry to interrupt Lord Hokage but I believe that the team could handle a higher ranked mission. Naruto stated politely. Minato immediately frowned and glared at the boy when he finished speaking. Oh? I was unaware that you were the sensei to the team. He responded coldly, causing Naruto to flinch. Kurenai mentally frowned. She had heard the rumor that these two did not get along. Well, more like Naruto did his best to be polite while Minato just outright hated him. Why though she could not understand. Of course I am not Lord Hokage. I am simply saying that from my standpoint, the team could handle something more. I meant no offense to you or Kurenai-sensei. Naruto said through barely contained rage. The fourth had always bared some kind of grudge against him. In fact, Naruto could remember all the times Minato had the Anbu appear and taken him to jail under the charge of disorderly conduct. That's what the public was told. When in private Minato would openly tell Naruto that the only crime he had committed was being alive. It was only by the grace of the Sandaime that Naruto survived and got any peace in his life. HMPH. Anyway, in order for that to be true I need the word of the sensei. Not some genin. He said the last word as if it could physically harm Naruto. Like he was saying the word, monster, or freak. Kurenai thought it over some before arriving at an answer. If Shino and Hinata both agree then yes I believe we are ready. Naruto, Minato and Kurenai turned to look at the aforementioned parties. I believe we are ready. Hinata declared proudly, albeit in a softer and quieter voice than normal. This is the most logically choice and thus I approve of it. We are needed to defend the village at some point and gaining experience now would greatly assist in that task. Shino added, pushing up his glasses. Naruto happened to notice that he seemed to be doing that a lot. Very well. There is a mission here I think would do you all some good. Go out, see the sights, do a mission and return. They all nodded at the idea. It did seem nice after all. Very good. You will be going to Kusagakure and delivering a message to a team that will be arriving there from Kumogakure. You leave tomorrow. Kurenai accepted the scroll with a bow. All right team. Outside we go. The team wordlessly followed their sensei. Naruto couldn't help but cringe under the harsh glare that he was receiving from the Hokage. It kinda made him wonder who his son Mino would be teamed up with. You heard the Hokage. Rest up and meet at the front gate at 0600. And just like that, the damnable woman was gone in a swirl of leaves. Naruto let out a grunt of frustration. He hated when she did that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Naruto said with a genuine smile and took off to go to his house. Over the 2 months he had become rather close with the others and even began trusting them with his life. For Naruto this was the highest level of respect as only the old man had earned this kind of attention. While Naruto was leaping on the rooftops to his house his stomach rumbled. It wasn't a strong one but it was enough to let him know he needed something. So Naruto decided to stop at a dango stand to grab some of the snacks to take home and eat. Hey, he had earned a treat. When he got there though he did not know exactly how to react to the scene. Inside the stand there sat a woman with a tan trench coat, a brown skirt and a mesh body armor. Her purple hair was pulled back in a wilder ponytail. She gave Naruto an eerie feeling in his chest from possible fear. But this is not what frightened him. No, what scared him was the rate at which this woman was downing dango. Stick after stick of the stuff vanished into that black pit of a mouth and she never even seemed to slow down any. It took 15 brutal minutes of this before the woman was full. It was then that Naruto decided that he did not feel hungry anymore. What are you looking at, Brett? The woman called out. Naruto looked around and realized he was the only one in the stand. Sadly, she was talking to him. Nothing. Just. How do you eat so much of that stuff? He admitted that curiosity had gotten the better of him. The woman just snorted indigently. Because dango is the best stuff in the world. Naruto's sweat dropped at that. I mean it is good but not the best. A kunai flew past his face with dangerous speeds. Naruto narrowly managed to bend out of the way of the kunai, watching it with his eyes as it went. When his vision returned to the purple-haired lady he cringed. The look on her face was pure murder. What did you say? She asked deathly quiet. Naruto decided he was not about to be bullied by another shinobi for no other reason than speaking his mind. You heard me. He spoke while narrowing his eyes at her. The silted emerald eyes positively glowed at the woman. The two stayed dead locked with each other, neither of them blinking or moving. Several tense minutes went by before the lady smirked and leaned back in her chair. You got balls, kid. What's your name? Though she already knew. Anko had watched him for several weeks now. Trying to find any reason to not trust him or any reason to prove he was just like his father, Naruto. It's a pleasure to meet you, miss? Naruto inquired about the crazy lady. Me? She feigned an insulted expression. I am the sexy and single Mitarashi Anko. Somehow banners behind her exploded in a show of smoke and confetti. The words written on the banners were the same she had just said. Both Naruto and the owner of the shop, who had listened in on the conversation, sweat dropped. Okay then. He paused for a moment. Well, I'll see you around then. He gave her a quick bow before leaving the snake mistress of Konoha alone. Anko watched him leave with very careful eyes. This had been more or less her final test for the kid. Either you are a damn good actor or you really are nothing like that bastard, Anko thought to herself with a smile. Kurenai was actually kinda right. They were both alike in the fact that Orochimaru had abandoned both of them for other pursuits. Naruto flopped onto his bed after his cold shower. Not that he liked to take cold showers, but that's all that he had. The landlord here had turned off the hot water for him. Something about saving it for those who needed it. As he lay he thought about his friends and sensei. Shino could be a touch quiet but was really helpful in a pinch due to the infernal bugs. Shino and Naruto had sparred before and most of the time Naruto won, but there was one time that Shino won by sucking all the chakra from his body and forcing him into submission. Hinata was probably the most troublesome of all. She could literally see everything that was thrown at her. Naruto couldn't hide from her or even attempt to block her vision. Any type of smoke and she just saw right through it. Not to mention that she was fast on her feet and her hands with her strikes. Sadly, it was never enough to beat Naruto. His mind just always found a way to beat her and Shino. Not to say they were bad fighters. Naruto was just better. He had developed a bit of a complex from his pride in his abilities. Kurenai did her best to keep his ego in check, but she was hard-pressed not to be proud of all three of the genin. Their training, combined with their clan training for Hinata and Shino, made them a well-oiled machine. She would never admit it, but she bragged to other jonin about her team. Anko herself grew interested in the team. More for Naruto, but she was actually impressed with the growth the other two showed as well. It seemed like every time he took a step ahead, the other two would be right on his heels, pushing him to push himself harder. It seemed that Naruto had made true friends among those two. Perhaps the most proud of all would be the Sandaime. Naruto was quickly surpassing every expectation he had placed for him. He was making friends, training hard, working with his team and smiling more often now. Naruto had quickly proved that he was nothing like his father was at that age, and Hiruzen could not be more happy because of that. Naruto closed his eyes softly and fell into a light sleep. The possibility of excitement tomorrow kept him partial awake for the majority of the night. Outside Naruto's window, a man watched Naruto fall to sleep. His eyes kept keen focus on his sleeping form, as if he could learn everything from just looking at him. The man's glasses reflected the moonlight, causing the glasses to glint. His purple high-collar shirt hid his lower face well but let his sliver hair shine in the light. Lord Orochimaru will want to know of this. Naruto opened his eyes only to come face to face with his worst enemy, the sun. The damn fiery orb of light just loved to beam him right in the eyes. Especially when he was having a rather pleasant dream about how cool his family must have been. He fought the beam of light for several minutes before finally conceding to the sun and getting up. "You win this time," he grumbled to no one in particular, rubbing the sleep from his eyes and letting a hearty yawn fill the silence of his home. He stretched happily till his eyes caught hold of his clock. "Ah!" he shouted. He had a grand total of 30 minutes to shower himself, pack his supplies, and meet his team. He sped out of his bed and cloths and hurried into the shower. He lathered on his soap and washed himself off. He dashed out of there naked as the day he was born. He threw on his outfit, which consisted of a black long-sleeve shirt, a dark sage green t-shirt over it. He wore the same colored sage green pants and shinobi pants. He hastily shoved all his gear inside of his pack and blasted out of the door, intent on not being late. He hopped from roof to roof, pushing his body to its limits in the rush to beat the time. His face became tight in concentration, his focus purely on the attempt to make it. "Come on, don't be late," he berated himself as if it would make him go any faster. He actually smiled when the gates of Konoha came into view. Energy and emotion overwhelmed him at the last second. "Yes!" he shouted victoriously. At the gates, Kurenai tapped her foot impatiently against the floor. Naruto was running dangerously close to being late for the second time. Normally she would just give him a slight scolding and a slap on the wrist. That would be under normal conditions. This was not one of those times. Not only was this their first real mission, one that would vastly improve their record as a team and their renown, not that they were after that. But add to the fact the Yondaime had decided to personally see the team off on their first C-ranked mission added to the stress. Naruto will be late in 3, 2. Kurenai was cut off by a victorious shout. Yes. Team 8 and the Yondaime all looked in the direction of the shout. Kurenai could have face-palmed at the sight. It became quite obvious that Naruto had rushed his process by the look of his outfit upon arriving. "Sorry, pant, Kurenai-sensei. Had to, pant, rush to get here." He bowed to his sensei before realizing the Yondaime was there as well. "Sorry to you as well, Lord Hokage." He bowed to the Hokage as well. Kurenai was about to say that Naruto wasn't late by roughly 5 or so minutes when Minato cut her off. "That is no excuse to wake up half of the village genin. And perhaps you need your training updated if you can find enough time to be lazy and show up whenever you feel like." He growled out, making Naruto cower under the man. Shino and Hinata both shivered silently at the way their teammate was being treated. Naruto backed away slowly as the memory of what had happened last time came to mind. Kurenai was about to speak up on Naruto's behalf when she sensed a presence coming to her. A rather calm and friendly chakra. Not to mention strong and vast. Not 2 seconds later the elderly Sandaime arrived with Asuma in tow. Asuma looked as though he was literally dragged out of his bed and brought here. Hiruzen gave the squad a bright smile that seemed to warm up the icy air the Yondaime had set before. Hello everyone. Hiruzen greeted them all. Yeah, good fuck. Sarutobi shot him a death glare, reminding him that there were still children in the area. Not to mention 2 ladies. Freaking morning, he grumbled out. The Sandaime smiled brightly at his son. Hello Hiruzen. Minato was the first call out. The Hokages exchanged head nods. Hiruzen could tell that Minato was displeased that he had shown up when he did, saving Naruto further berating. Ah, good morning Lord Sandaime. Hello to you too Asuma. Better keep good watch on that mouth of yours lest it get you in trouble later. Kurenai teased. Asuma blushed slightly and rubbed the back of his head, causing Minato, Hiruzen, Kurenai, and Hinata to chuckle, giggle. Shino didn't because he simply did not find it to be so funny. Naruto didn't because he didn't quite understand. He had no idea why his sensei's words had such a profound effect on the man. One second he was positively glowing with confidence and pride, and the next he was blushing and had an aura of submission. Naruto would look into this more when he got a chance to do so. Pardon me Hiruzen, but may I ask why you are here? The aged looked up to his successor with a smile. Same reason you are Minato. I wanted to see the team off on its first serious mission. Minato frowned for a brief second. Every time him and Naruto got into a spat or anything of the sort, the Sandaime would show up and act all innocent. Minato sometimes thought that maybe he was going too far when it came to Naruto, but then he remembered Kushina and would be re-motivated. Well, speaking of which, we really must be off. Wouldn't want the team from Kumo to be forced to wait on us. Kurenai said with a smile. Hinata paled slightly, even more than she normally looks, at the mention of Kumo. While it was true that relations had improved with them recently, Hinata still lived in fear of the nation. Of course Kurenai. Have a safe trip. The Sandaime spoke sincerely. Asuma and Minato nodded in agreement, and the soon Team 8 was off to the land of grass to meet their contacts from Kumo. The genin of Team 8 all waved at the departing party that had gathered. Soon, though the team was out of sight and hearing range, Minato looked to the Sandaime with a foul look. Why do you always do that? He asked with an icy tone. Hiruzen continued waving and staring at the backs of the group. Minato started getting upset that he wouldn't answer. Eventually though he did. Because your grudge against that boy is foolish. He has done nothing but be of service to the village. He started. The Yondaime already could feel his blood beginning to boil. What happened with Kushina? Don't you dare go there. She died because of that fiend. How many lives has he ruined other than mine? That man is the walking definition of evil. Pure, uncorrupted evil. Hiruzen looked away in shame. He had always felt that every death Orochimaru caused since he left the village had been his fault. All the pain and suffering Orochimaru caused weighed heavy on his heart. Perhaps the heaviest weight would be the death of Kushina. When Orochimaru caused the seal to break and the Kyuubi to be let free. The death and destruction the Kyuubi had caused to the village and its people were sky high. Not to mention the after effects of such an attack. Many were left with emotional scars that ran deep. Minato had secretly let the information that Orochimaru had caused it leak out from the council to the people. Needless to say, they were in an uproar by such a vile action. It was a smart move by Minato as it directed the hate away from his son and to the son of Orochimaru. Exactly. Remember Hiruzen, you won't be able to protect him forever. With that, Minato left the Sarutobi clan head and heir to mull over their thoughts. Hey dad, don't worry about him. Orochimaru is not your burden, Yano? I think the Lord Hokage went a bit overboard with that last comment. Asuma patted his father's shoulder, causing the elderly man to let a small smile hit his lips. It was a rare moment to see his son stand up for him. He knew Naruto would stand up for him if he could. That only made his smile grow bigger. With Team 8, the group had made excellent progress over the past few hours. Kusa was actually not that far away from the village. Just past the village jurisdiction, right on the outskirts of the forest. Right when grass met trees. It was here that the group decided to stop for a second. To catch their breath so they didn't look like complete vagabonds when meeting the other team. Hey, why are we stopping, Kurenai-sensei? Naruto asked in a slightly whiny voice. Kurenai sighed and tossed him a rag. Because we don't want to seem tired or weak in front of the other team. What if they decide to attack us? She inquired to Naruto and, by extension, the group. Shino was the first to come up with something to add to the conversation. Would they do that, Kurenai-sensei? What would they have to gain from such an action? Surely they know that they would damage the already weak alliance between our nations. Not to mention I am sure their Kage would disappointed in them for their rash action. Shino inquired as logically as he could. His brain could not figure out why they might take aggressive action. Oh, and what if they plan on becoming missing nins? Or perhaps this is all just a setup to capture the Hyuga heiress again and give her to Kumo anyway? Naruto gulped. He had heard of the incident with Kumo, who hadn't, and he could honestly say he wouldn't want anyone to live like that. Much less a teammate. Hinata almost passed out on the spot. The only reason she had stayed standing was the looks that both of her teammates gave her. They weren't angry or one of pity for her being weak. No, they were ones of defense and determination to protect the Hyuga if it came to that. I won't let them harm her. Naruto said lowly. His voice had released some of the pent-up rage his body held from his treatment over the years. This made the air around him drop several degrees. All to show how serious he actually was. I concur with Naruto's statement. Shino added in with fire in his voice. Well, while I am happy to hear that we still have a few hours before the team gets here. Let's get cleaned up and get ready for them. We have 2 hours to spend, so be back here at the end of that and do not go into town yet. Kurenai informed them and they did as they were told. 2.5 hours later, Team 8 strolled into the boarding town casually. Kurenai led the group, putting a strong air of confidence around her. Hinata was to her left. The poor girl was doing her best to put on her strongest face so that the Kumo nin didn't think she was weak. Naruto walked to the right of Kurenai. He wanted to be up here to foresee any attempts on Hinata. Shino brought up the rear, planting bugs on the others so as to monitor them. Soon Naruto saw a team round the corner and start walking towards them. They were in a familiar formation as his team. The leader bringing up the front had a white bandana on while wearing the traditional Jonin attire of Kumo. His 3 genin were dressed in a black long-sleeve shirt with gray pants. Over the shirt was a small sleeveless jacket, signaling they were genin. Kurenai and the leader of the other stopped a good distance away from each other. Now that the Jonin of Kumo was closer, he could see that his face had a deep scar going through his face, starting from the left side of his jaw and going all the over his right eyes, which was grayed out. Naruto could say he felt uneasy around the man. You must be the team from Konoha. The man stated simply. His voice sounded like something one would hear from a smoker of 30 or so years. Very coarse and harsh. Yes, my name is Kurenai and this is my team. Shino, Naruto and Hinata. She pointed to each member when their names were called. Each of the genin stood proud when they were called. My name is Tarnki. These are my genin, Terakarshi, Maribi, and Kian. The now identified Tarnki said. He too pointed to each member. The first being Terakarshi. He was easily the tallest of the group, aside from their leader. He had a hammer on his back and slicked back orange hair. Maribi was up next, the female of the group. She had pale white hair that reached down to her shoulder blades. She had a small katana on her back held in by a strap. Lastly was Kian. He had his headband over his eyes with his brown hair falling over it. Nice to meet you all. She gave them a slight bow and motioned for her team to do the same. Which they did, except Naruto kept his head up and eyes on the kid who had his eyes covered, likewise. Tarnki bowed with his team. Kian did the same as Naruto and kept his eyes locked on him. I have the scroll here if you have yours. Might as well get this over with so that we can head back home. I am sure you are a busy person. Kurenai tried to hurry things along. The look that Jonin was giving her was steadily making her feel uncomfortable. And if I wanted to play a bit first? He smiled devilishly, his team behind him getting into a defensive stance. Kurenai narrowed her eyes at the man and readied her chakra. The others picked up in this and assumed a fighting stance. I don't know about your team, but I know my team is not up for playing. Kurenai grounded out. Tarnki ran his hand through a scar on his face. A Hyuga gave me this and I want to pay a Hyuga back for it. Judging by the eyes on that one over there, she is a Hyuga. Hinata tensed heavily at this. Her legs were beginning to buckle from the killing intent Tarnki was releasing. Naruto couldn't stand that kind of talk towards a teammate. He had become very protective of his friends. You won't lay one hair on Hinata's head. At that declaration, the entire group went into hostile mode. Terakarshi moved his meaty arm up to grip the handle of his hammer. Maribi put her hand on the katana and pulled it slightly out of the sheath. Kian assumed a very Juken-like stance, confusing the others. Hinata assumed the same stance as Kian, her pearl-white eyes blazing with activation. Naruto drew a kunai and poised his vision on Terakarshi. Shino let the air around him become filled with his chakra-draining insects. Kurenai made no outward movement but readied her chakra for a group genjutsu. Tarnki shared a hearty laugh. "And who is gonna stop? Me? You?" He jabbed at the pale boy. When Naruto looked back on this moment, he still couldn't explain what caused him to do this, but he did. Naruto let his anger flow freely through his body. His eyes positively blazed at the man. Alas, that wasn't the worst. When Tarnki looked at Naruto's eyes, his shadow moved behind him. Out of the shadow came the one and only Snake Sanin, Orochimaru. The killing intent being blasted from Naruto landed solely on the scarred Jonin. The shadow disguised as Orochimaru licked his lips maliciously. Tarnki soon found himself gulping harshly to ease the stress. "Why yeah, whatever. He is the scroll." He tossed it to Kurenai, who, in return, tossed her own scroll to the man. What had Naruto done to cause such a turnaround in the man? As fast as they had arrived, the Kumo team took their leave and left with haste. "Safe travels," he spoke before he got too far away. "Naruto, what did you say to the man?" Kurenai's soft voice caused Naruto to snap from his anger-filled stupor and to look at his superior. He lowered his head slightly when he realized he had lost control of himself. His cheeks tinted red with shame. "I'm sorry, Kurenai-sensei. I didn't mean to lose my temper. I just didn't like the way he was talking to Hinata." Kurenai's gaze softened on the boy. He truly had no idea what he did and, truth be told, neither did the rest of Team 8. "It's okay, Naruto. Just please try and keep it under control for now." Naruto nodded. Kurenai turned to the rest of the group to address them. "We are going to head back." "No." She was cut off by a monkey-faced Anbu landed in front of her. "I am sorry to interrupt, but I have an urgent message from the Yondaime. He requires that Team 8 move with haste to assist Team 7 with a mission that had just become ranked." Kurenai's eyes widened upon hearing that. No genin team should have to face an A-ranked mission. Especially not one so green. "Inform the Hokage that we will be leaving at once." "Where is the mission location?" she inquired with haste. They had to get moving. Team 7 could be in danger. The monkey Anbu handed her a scroll. "The Land of Waves." Several days later, Naruto was plain out exhausted. Kurenai had pushed them all to rush to their destination with speed and stamina they just did not have yet. Not to mention that Naruto had to carry Hinata for the last leg of the trip as the heiress was simply too tired to carry on without stumbling. Luckily Shino had managed to keep up. Naruto didn't think he could carry both of them. When they arrived at a tiny waterfront shack, Kurenai held up a hand and ordered them to stop. "We're here." She spoke softly as if the past few days of travel had no effect on her. Which in reality it hadn't. Using genjutsu as her primary attack style required her to be fast on her feet to avoid close-quarters fighting. Instantly the trio of genin collapsed on the dirt floor, each breathing hard and pale from the physical exertion. Kurenai looked back and felt a pang of regret in her heart. She had pushed them too hard in an attempt to save others. Ensure another team did not fall apart like hers had. "I'm sorry," was the last thing Naruto heard before letting the darkness claim his vision. The next day, when Naruto awoke, the first thing he noticed were his muscles. They were unbelievably sore and stiff. No doubt from the extensive running and physical strain the past few days have brought him. He slowly made his way out of the bed into a standing position. Well, more like a supported standing position. He had to rest an arm on the wooden chair that was next to him. His legs felt like pure jelly when he tried to apply even the smallest amount of pressure to them. It seemed like walking was out of the question for the day. Instead, Naruto simply turned around and sat in the wooden chair, too tired to really do anything. The chair creaked with confirmation of the action. He figured he would just wait for someone to come to him instead of screaming or shouting for help. While he waited, he took the time to look around the room. Obviously the room was not of a high standard, seeing as how the teal paint was chipping off the walls. The wooden floor creaked rather loudly whenever someone moved it, and the windows looked to be about 2 seconds away from shattering. Yes, Naruto was indeed in a very poor place. Or a well-placed genjutsu. Either way, it did not sit right with him. Before long his eyelids began to grow heavy and slowly began to fall to a close. And they would have if not for his sensei opening the door at the last moment. "Oh Naruto. Good, you're still awake. I came when I heard the floor creak to make sure you were okay," Kurenai asked in her best caretaker's voice. Naruto could easily tell that she was feeling guilty for her actions. His voice was very weakened compared to the normal strength it held. "I'm fine," Naruto said through a strained voice, causing Kurenai to wince as if she had been struck by a physical blow. He didn't intend for it to be a harmful statement. Her own guilt had done that to herself. "Well, I am going to do the same thing for you as I did the others. I know you must be so sore to the point where walking must hurt. I am going to heal your body as best as I can so you can at least move around today and train some tomorrow." Naruto could have jumped for joy at that moment. Alas, his body was far too mangled to do such an action. Within moments of her sentence, Kurenai floated over to Naruto. Her hands burst into green, soothing light that enveloped his body in a green cocoon. His body was soon put to ease from his aches and pains that had haunted him for the past 30 or so minutes. When she was done, she greeted Naruto with a smile, who eagerly returned it. "Thank you, Kurenai-sensei," the now healed boy declared proudly. "You are very welcome. Come to the living room whenever you are ready." And with that she left the pale child alone for the moment. Naruto sighed to himself before gingerly standing to test his leg strength. They managed to stand, albeit a bit shaky at first. He let out a grunt of frustration before walking out of the room. When Naruto entered the living room, he frowned deeply. The first time he had frowned so deeply in nearly 2 months. His vision first landed on Shino and Hinata, and some kid with a small dog were talking with a small boy who seemed to be crying about something. Kurenai was next to a lazy postured man with one eye. Then his eyes met his rival's eyes. Naruto locked eyes with Sasuke, who was seemingly ignoring a pink-haired girl next to him. The Uchiha held the same confident smirk that he normally held, but his eyes held something deeper. Something Naruto could relate to. Hate burned deep within his eyes. "So Sasuke, when we get back to the village, do you?" the pink-haired girl began before getting cut off. "Shut up, Sakura. You're annoying me," Sasuke said as he walked away. Naruto seethed with barely controlled rage as the Uchiha made his way towards, all the while holding that same smirk. If Team 8 learned anything about Naruto during his time, it was that he was very possessive and protective of his things, teammates included, and seeing someone mistreat their teammates drove him mad. Sasuke stopped directly in front of Naruto with his arms crossed. "Something wrong, idiot?" The room went silent at that. Naruto could barely stop himself from shaking with disgust at the situation. "Yeah, my problem is the way you treat your teammate over there," Naruto said through clenched teeth. Sasuke scoffed. "I don't see how that is your problem. She is worthless and I will treat her as such. Much like you, idiot." By now both senseis were on their way to their star pupils, but Naruto was set. As fast as one might blink, Naruto popped Sasuke right in the nose with his closed fist. Sakura screamed at her hurt idol and Hinata gasped at her teammates' actions. Kiba yelled at Naruto and Shino analyzed the situation. Kurenai and Kakashi pulled the two genin apart. Naruto went silently while Sasuke held his gushing nose. Once Team 8 and Team 7 were separated, Team 8 decided to have a group talk. Team meeting everyone. All three genin perked up to listen to their sensei. "We need to talk about what happened in there." Kurenai started out. She was about to continue her speech when Shino interrupted. "Pardon me, sensei, but I do not believe we, or rather Naruto, did anything wrong. The way the Uchiha acted toward his pink-haired teammate was not acceptable among ninja. His attitude towards the shinobi world is in serious need of being improved," Shino said rather bluntly. Hinata nodded at her friend's statement. Naruto looked away, seeing as how this conversation was about his actions. Internally he was berating himself about his behavior. He had lost control again when his sensei had asked him to keep control on himself. What would the old man think if he was caught acting so rashly? Surely he would be upset with the boy. "Is that how you feel as well, Hinata?" Kurenai asked in a neutral and curious tone. The meek girl looked up at her sensei. "It is Kurenai-sensei. What Sasuke did was wrong and Naruto was right for standing up for her." Naruto for his part was moved. No one had ever so selflessly defended him with their words and creditability except the old man. Kurenai was about to speak when Kakashi decided to drop in on the situation. Yo. He greeted the group with a strange, eye smile. The Jonin stood lazily in his blue and green outfit. His head protector covered over one of his eyes, which made Naruto wonder if the man had lost his eye in some way. Hello Kakashi. Is there a reason you are here? Kurenai asked the silver-haired man sternly. Kakashi sighed loudly, the stress of the situation beginning to hit him. I came to apologize for a Sasuke. See, we ran into the Demon Brothers and Zab, Uza-Momochi. Yes, we know. We saw the report and that is the only reason we came here as fast as we did. Still, that alone is not reason enough for Sasuke to be berating his teammate and picking fights with Naruto here. Despite their history together, Kakashi nodded dumbly. I know and I agree with you. I talked with him about it, but he said the only way he would ever apologize is if Naruto and him fought. Kurenai looked at him like he had grew a second head. Do you have so little power and command of your genin that they can walk all over you like this? I swear Kakashi, I'll do it. Naruto spoke quietly. Kurenai stopped speaking to turn her vision to him. Are you sure, Naruto? You have to be exhausted and there is no need to stoke the Uchiha's ego. Kurenai pleaded with her student. I won't lose. With that, Naruto started walking back towards the house, to which there was a large clearing before the forest turned to beach. Sasuke was attempting to run up the tree. He would get about halfway up and fall straight back down. Team 8 plus Kakashi followed Naruto to oversee the match to ensure that no one got too injured. Sakura sat high up on her tree branch and cheered Sasuke on to get the rest of the way up the tree. Kiba and Sasuke seemed to be about tied when it came to progress. Hey Sasuke, Naruto called out, causing both boys and Sakura to look at the pale-skinned child. Are you crazy? I could have hurt myself. Kiba barked out. The little dog, Akamaru, yipped in response. Naruto said nothing but kept walking towards Sasuke with a determined glare. That is, until Kiba got in his way. Hey, I'm talking to you. Kiba tried to punch Naruto in the jaw. Naruto simply danced around the punch and chopped Kiba in the neck, causing him to pass out. Sasuke smirked and began to walk towards Naruto. In one dash, Naruto had cleared the distance and tossed Sasuke against the tree he was climbing on. Sasuke let out a pained grunt and looked up. There was Naruto clinging to the tree above Sasuke without any exertion on his part. Still can't climb a tree, eh Sasuke? The Uchiha growled fiercely and ran up the tree to try and get Naruto. The snake-like boy jumped off the tree just before Sasuke got to him. The Uchiha lost his focus and fell back down the tree, smacking his head off the tree on the way down, and landing flat on his back. A split second later, a foot came crashing down on the young Uchiha's stomach, forcing all the air out of his lungs and doubling the impact. Soon Sasuke was gasping for air like a fish out of water. Kakashi was about to step in when Kurenai held out her hand and shook her head. Kakashi sighed. Sasuke was going to be mad at him later. Speaking of him, when he finally caught his breath back, he stood up and glared at the boy. I am an Uchiha. How dare you lay a hand on me? Naruto scoffed while dodging wild fists from said Uchiha. Punches and kicks were thrown, but Naruto just bobbed and weaves out of the way. Eventually Sasuke began to tire himself out. Naruto saw this and made his move. Dodging a right fist, Naruto slipped to his right side and let the Uchiha's jaw feel the power of his uppercut. Sasuke felt his whole world grow dark and cold before passing out. Naruto smirked at the fallen boy. Just because you have a name doesn't make you strong. Training and becoming strong, that is true strength. Naruto stalked away from the scene and went into the house. He quickly found the same room he was in before and sat in the chair. Kurenai was right. His body did need rest, and rest is what his body got. His eyes practically slammed shut when he got into the room. He is going to be pissed off when he wakes up. Kakashi scooped up Sasuke and brought him back inside to lay him on the couch. Sakura instantly dashed off her tree and back into the house with her precious idol. Kiba soon came back to life and looked around with confusion. Hey Kurenai-sensei, what happened to everyone? Kiba inquired as calmly as he could. Kurenai looked at the boy with disappointment at first before realizing he may have just been upset at the moment and never intended for the punch to hurt. They went inside Kiba. We should go too. Kurenai put a hand on Kiba's shoulder and walked back into the house. She was too busy thinking about the mental state of her pupil to see the smiles both Shino and Hinata wore all the way into the house. She didn't even sense the presence at the edge of the woods that was looking upon them. Hidden location: Lord Zabuza. The team from Konoha has summoned reinforcements to aid them. A feminine voice called out from the shadows, a hunter mask adored to the face. The man named Zabuza looked to his partner with a grin hidden behind the bandages. More lambs to the slaughter, he said in an icy voice. But the voice tried to reason. Haku, do not worry, damn it. They are nothing but insects compared to us. More people means more space taken up. It will be harder to fight us in the mist without tripping over themselves. The person named Haku bowed low at the head. Of course. When do we strike? Tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys.